Before we begin, subscribe if you're drawn to the darkest corners of real crime. Like the video if you feel the tension creeping in, and leave a comment if you think you know where this story is headed, because once it starts, there's no turning back. The call came in just after dawn, when the city still felt half asleep. An unmarked SUV sat abandoned at the edge of a quiet industrial lot, its windows fogged from the cold night air. Patrol officers circled it cautiously, hands hovering near their holsters. The smell came first, faint, sour, wrong. Then they opened the trunk. Inside was a large plastic storage bin, the kind you'd buy to organize a garage. Its lid was sealed tight with heavy-duty tape, wrapped again and again, as if whoever closed it was terrified of what might escape. When investigators finally cut it open, the world shifted. A young woman's body lay folded inside, wrapped in plastic. She had been missing for days. Now she was evidence. By noon, the lot was crawling with detectives. Yellow tape snapped in the wind. Crime scene techs photographed every angle, every scrape, every fiber clinging to the bin. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. This was deliberate, personal, and whoever did this had help. The victim was 19. Friends described her as quiet but stubborn, someone who loved hard and trusted too easily. Her last known contact was her boyfriend, a volatile young man with a temper and a history of explosive arguments. He told police they'd fought, that she'd stormed out, that he hadn't seen her since. But his hands shook when he spoke, and he wouldn't meet their eyes. Detectives dug into his phone records first. Messages painted a darker picture, threats masked as jokes, apologies followed by rage, a relationship spiraling out of control. Then something stranger surfaced, calls placed not just to friends, but to his mother, over and over, late at night, early morning, always before and after the worst fights. Investigators visited the mother's home that evening. She was calm, too calm. She offered coffee, spoke softly, said her son was misunderstood, a good boy, protective. When asked about the girlfriend, her expression tightened just slightly, like a door closing. Back at the station, a young detective replayed an interview with one of the boyfriend's exes. The woman hesitated, then leaned forward and lowered her voice. She said the son once told her something that never sat right, something his mother had said during one of his rants, words that sounded less like advice and more like permission. "Get angry," he'd told the ex, quoting his mother. "Do what you have to do." The room went silent as the detective paused the recording. Outside, rain began to fall, streaking the windows like tears. If the testimony was true, this wasn't just a crime of passion, it was something colder, something coached. And when detectives finally obtained a warrant to search the mother's garage, they noticed something unsettling right away. One storage bin was missing. The garage smelled like oil and dust, but beneath it lingered something sharper, cleaning chemicals used too recently, too thoroughly. Detectives moved slowly, documenting everything. Scratches on the concrete floor, a faint rectangular outline where a large bin had once sat, rolls of heavy-duty tape identical to the kind found on the trunk container. It wasn't proof yet, but it was a pattern, and patterns were how killers got caught. They brought the son in again that night. Under the fluorescent lights of the interview room, he looked smaller, drained. He stuck to the same story, repeating it like a script he'd memorized. They argued, she left, he panicked. Nothing more. But when they slid a photo across the table, the bin sealed and taped, his jaw tightened. He swallowed hard. The lead detective didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He asked about the calls to his mother, the late-night conversations, the long silences on the line. The son stared at the tabletop, tracing the wood grain with his finger. Minutes passed. Then he whispered, almost to himself, "She said I needed to stop being weak." That was the crack. Investigators leaned in, letting the silence do the work. The son talked about his temper, how it scared him, how he'd call his mother when he felt like he was losing control, how she'd calm him down at first. But then, according to him, her advice changed. She told him anger was power, that people only listened when you showed them you meant it, that fear solved problems.
When asked if she'd ever mentioned the girlfriend by name, he hesitated. His eyes darted to the one-way mirror. "She said the girl was ruining my life," he finally said, "that I'd never be free as long as she was around." Across town, detectives tracked down a friend of the mother's. The man was nervous, his voice unsteady. He said she'd asked him for help moving something heavy a few days earlier, a bin. She told him it was old clothes. He noticed the smell. He noticed the tape. When he asked questions, she snapped at him, then apologized. Later that night, racked with guilt, he called police. Digital forensics added another layer. Text messages between mother and son surfaced, cryptic, fragmented, but damning. "Stay calm. Don't talk. I'll handle it." Then one message sent hours after the girlfriend vanished. "Did you do what we talked about?" The case accelerated. Prosecutors upgraded the charges. Media vans crowded the courthouse steps. Headlines screamed about betrayal, about a mother crossing an unthinkable line. But inside the investigation, a darker fear took hold. If the mother helped plan this, what else had she helped erase? Then came the search of her phone. Deleted photos were recovered, images taken in the garage, the bin, the tape, a trunk interior shot from an odd angle, and one final image time-stamped just minutes before dawn. A text draft, never sent, addressed to her son. "You can't hesitate now." As detectives pieced it together, one question burned hotter than the rest. Was the son the instrument or the shield? And just as they prepared arrest warrants, a jailhouse call was flagged. The mother, calm as ever, leaned into the receiver and spoke 6 words that froze the room. "He doesn't know everything I did." The arrest came quietly, without sirens or spectacle. The mother didn't resist. She folded her hands as cuffs clicked into place, her expression composed, almost relieved. In court, she pleaded not guilty, her attorney painting her as a parent trapped in a nightmare of her son's making. But detectives knew better now. The evidence told a colder story. Prosecutors laid it out, piece by piece. Phone records showing hours-long calls before and after the murder. Surveillance footage placing her SUV near the industrial lot just before dawn. Fibers from her garage matching those found inside the bin. And then there was the testimony. Former girlfriends, friends, even her own son, describing the same pattern. When anger rose, she didn't stop it, she sharpened it. The son eventually broke. On the stand, his voice shook as he described the night everything went wrong. The argument, the rage, the moment he realized he'd gone too far. He said he called his mother in a panic, expecting her to tell him to run, to hide. Instead, she told him to think, to breathe, to finish what he'd started and clean it up properly. She walked him through the next steps like a checklist, her tone calm, almost instructional. Jurors watched as text messages were read aloud. The courtroom went still when the final one appeared on the screen. Anger makes you strong. Weakness gets you caught. The words didn't sound like a mother trying to save her child. They sounded like someone who believed she was right. During closing arguments, the prosecutor leaned into the truth no one wanted to say out loud. This wasn't just a murder, it was a partnership, a manipulation built over years where love and control blurred into something dangerous. The son had hands capable of violence. The mother had a mind willing to justify it. The verdict came back unanimous, guilty on all counts. As the sentence was read, the mother finally looked at her son, not with remorse, not with regret, with disappointment, like a teacher watching a student fail an exam. Outside the courthouse, the victim's family stood together, holding framed photos of the girl they'd lost. There was no celebration, only exhaustion. Justice didn't bring her back. It only closed the door on the people who took her away. Months later, as the case faded from the headlines, a detective revisited the evidence one last time. Something still nagged at him. In the mother's phone records, buried among hundreds of messages, was a pattern of unsent drafts, thoughts typed and erased, plans considered and discarded. It made him wonder how close this family had come to getting away with it. Because the most unsettling truth wasn't how the crime was committed, it was how easily it was justified. If this story got under your skin, stay close. There are more cases where the danger doesn't come from strangers in the dark, but from the people you trust the most.